like to invite up to the mic
Roman Harrison. We can't sit here and watch and wait any longer. This is affecting us greatly and it's harsh. We can't breathe. There's kids, there's babies struggling to breathe. There's 10-year-old kids with cancer. There's my grandmother who fought her fight for this air continuously to her last breath. And now I'm struggling to breathe. My mother's struggling to breathe. I have nephews, I have youngers, I have children. It's not right. We need to have to force them to speak to us. We can't sit here and continuously wait for a response, because they're not going to give us a response. As long as they're making money and making profit and monetizing our suffering, they won't speak up. They won't care because their pockets are getting filled. And this is wrong. This is our matter. You are here for us. Support all of us. This is affecting all of us, from old to young, black to white, gay, straight, doesn't matter your background. This is affecting all of us. It's time for all of us to speak.
So they know what's going on.
They know. This is clear. They can't plead ignorance, and they can't sit blissfully in that ignorance. It's insane. It's insanity. They're doing the same things repeatedly, and we see it. We have you. We've documented. We have seen this. It's time for you to be held accountable for your actions, because being passive for it won't change anything. My grandmother walks up into City Hall and will confront mayors, confront politicians, confront people for our people. And it's time for us to take that same fight. It's time for me to take up that same fight. It's time for my children to take up that same fight. It's done. That chokehold that they have in this community is done. We need to breathe, and we will breathe.
And how this has been going on for decades?
Decades, since I was a kid. I'm 25 years old. My grandmother on her dying breath was in her late 60s, early 70s. My mother is in her going into her early 50s. This has been affecting. This is a generational.
Is this genocide against the community?
This is mass genocide. It's genocide that's been prolonged. It's been genocide that's been happening for years. 10, 20, 30 plus years, 50 plus years is genocide that's happening over time. Because it's not happening all at once, it's not as massive. But the devastation is happening over time. It's insane. Bodies just in the
they're profiting from it.
They're profiting. They're making money. They're making money by supporting Lennar, allowing this company to come in here and destroy and wreck and do whatever they want, by holding them accountable. Because you're signing off these contractors to come and work in our city, but not telling us.
So we have a black mayor. Why isn't she representing the black community?
I couldn't tell you. I can't speak for her. Only she can. But I would love to know that answer. Why are you not even just for the black community, why aren't you supporting the community in general? Because it's not just about black or white, it's about all the people. Why aren't you supporting all these people? There's elderly white people that are suffering from this. There's elderly black people, there's elderly Asian people that are suffering from this. It's not even just a black or white, it's about a community. You're letting all these people suffer. Well, if you don't want to speak up for people of your own color, you can't speak up for other people. We have to have a voice.
So is she controlled by the developers?
I can't say that.
You're saying it continues to be developed. They want to continue to build condos.
I'm saying that it's continuing to be developed. That money is leading back here, but no one's saying anything. That's what I'm saying. When are you going to speak up? Because there's a bunch of accusations being thrown. When are you going to say that these accusations are not? As far as I'm concerned, your silence is consent to these tragedies. As long as you remain silent, you're consenting for this to happen repeatedly. You have to speak up. As long as you don't speak up, as long as you don't fight, as long as you don't say nothing, this is going to continue to happen. You are a mayor. You are for the people. Fight for your people. All people, not black, not white, all people. Fight for your people. Fight for your community. Build us back up like they've been tearing us down. Build us back up.
Sounds like they're fighting for Lennar.
They are fighting for Lennar. They're backing Lennar. They're backing Lennar more than us. You and I know this now. They're not supporting us. They're supporting Lennar because they're getting money.
Will never surrender, because we are dealing with a life and death crisis, and the people in Bayview Hunters Point are being treated like canaries in the coal mine for a impending catastrophe that has the impact of impacting the entire city and future generations. Some of you know that I am the founder and the director of the Hunters Point Biomonitoring Foundation. I was elected to the Hunters Point Shipyard Restoration Advisory Board in 2000, right after the landfill fire. The landfill fire metaphorically, woke up a lot of people and fired up a lot of people in this community. But what many of you people may not know is that I was interviewed 3 times for about 2 hours with the civil grand jury representatives beginning in 2000. I gave them all of Ahimsa Sumchai's greatest hits. You know? And I also submitted a formal complaint to the civil grand jury in 2021 after going through the Sunshine Task Force for 3 years with documentation of malfeasance, documentation that the mayor, that the Hunters Point Shipyard CAC, and the Navy do not adhere to the city's Sunshine Ordinance, and my investigation that I turned over to the civil grand jury is irrefutable. They don't have to. The Hunters Point Shipyard CAC, which is a quasi-governmental organization many of you are familiar with. They can say anything they want. They can keep anybody they want from not making public comment, and they do, and they legally have the right to do so. So I did play a role in the civil grand jury report. Bradley and I were discussing the fact that the civil grand jury effectively documents what the EPA identified in 1989. Let me see if I can pull this out. When it put the shipyard on the national priorities list. In 1989, the EPA said that the Hunters Point Shipyard had a hazard ranking score of 80. The national average is 50. All you need to have to be on the nation's dirtiest, most contaminated properties is a 20. And the shipyard had an 80. It was one of the most contaminated properties in the United States of America. And what that means is that there's an 80% chance that the toxic stew of toxins that we know is at the shipyard will come in contact with sensitive receptors like you, like playgrounds, like churches, like homes, and like daycare centers. But what is most important and what brings us back today, and I think I was mentioning to Ezra, that if you look at the history of the shipyard, like Bradley and I have been looking at it, ultimately there are historical loops. You're going to come back to something that someone has already said, something that someone has already investigated, something that someone has already protested. Here we are with Ariane, like a phoenix from the flame of her mother, and we're never going to surrender. But what that EPA hazard ranking score says is that there's 100% likelihood that the groundwater at the shipyard is going to contact sensitive receptors. 100%. What's in the groundwater? Arsenic, PCBs, radionuclides, and heavy metals. And do you know what the EPA also says? It says that these scores are not based on a comprehensive risk assessment of the site and do not reflect conditions after initiation of cleanup work. So here we are in 2022, and the EPA has told you that you've got 100% risk of groundwater migration, and the civil grand jury has told you that with sea level rise, that risk is going to increase beyond 100%. Okay, so that is the science. Now there's one other thing I want to show you, and you are very privileged. A lot of people don't know that the Shipyard Bible, the historical radiological assessment, took 3 versions to complete. Because some people say, how can the Navy leave a landfill that's got 2,000 radium dials, irradiated animal carcasses, radioactive sandblast, and who the hell knows what else in it, adjacent to a community of 35,000 people, 7 blocks east of the major transit center at 3rd and Palouse. How can the Navy do that? This is from the original historical radiological assessment. If it hadn't been for the uprising of the RAB, this is what the Navy was going to do at that landfill and at that shoreline. Do you see those areas in green? It means no further action. In the initial historical radiological assessment, the Navy's plan was to do nothing at the landfill. They were just going to transfer it. And these areas up here, Parcel B, those are also landfills. That radium dial that was discovered on Parcel A in 2018 is right next to those landfills. That's where the radium dials were buried. So I just want you to know again, that there's a historical precedence and that we have to take a stance. Now, in addition to what the civil grand jury said, and I agree with them, there's some basic things that we need to do. One, we need to get the people of San Francisco to oppose the transfer of the landfill. That's what's going on. They want to package up the landfill like a Christmas present and transfer it to the city, pretend it doesn't have methane pockets as high as 60% right now during the summer months. You know, pretend that it doesn't migrate laterally, pretend that they don't have the ability to control sea level rise. So the single most important thing, common sense, we got to convince the people of this city not to accept a radiation contaminated landfill for open space development. It's just crazy. Second thing that we need to do, we need to reinstate the RAB. Again, we're going back and back and back. We need a elected body that under federal government mandate must be transparent. We need radical transparency. And then we also need to address the fact that was emphasized in the first civil grand jury report. In 2010, the civil grand jury issued a report called Shifty Landscapes, and they documented that the Department of Public Health gets money for earth moving activities from the developer. They documented that. And until we break that loop of remuneration, of incentivizing moving radioactive dirt on a system of federal Superfund sites, we're not going to go anyplace. Okay, so Article 31, that is an approach that we need to take, and the civil grand jury did fall short in identifying that there are direct lines of responsibility. The Director of Health, Grant Colfax, meets annually with the controller, and he develops a formula for how much he's going to bill Lennar, the master developer, for oversight of earth-moving activities, not only at the shipyard. They now have Yosemite Slough and Treasure Island in their coffers. So cha-ching, you know, the cash register rings every time they scoop up dirt at these federal Superfund sites. So that's the reality, okay? Dr. Himsat Portasunch, I am the founder and director of the Hunters Point Biomonitoring Foundation and the former elected member of the RAB and founder.
What is the RAB?
The Shipyards Restoration Advisory.
You've been working on this for decades, medically, trying to investigate, and of the residents finding out that they're contaminated.
Oh, yes. I contacted Attorney General Javier Becerra about clear malfeasance that was going on with the UC review and the mayor and the Hunters Point Shipyard CAC. And he sent me a letter in which he ultimately referred me to the civil grand jury. He said, go to the DA, go to the city attorney's office. And then the last step that I took was the civil grand jury. And that complaint, documented a 3-year sunshine investigation into just various incidences of malfeasance, which essentially concluded that the mayor, the Hunters Point Shipyard CAC, and the Navy do not comply with the city's sunshine law and don't have to. So that's just, one of the conclusions that the civil grand jury report came to.
And the city attorney, why isn't the city attorney or even district attorney prosecuted these officials who are violating the laws, who are selling condos on city jobs?
Yeah, well,
Amy Brunel?
Yeah, well, the city attorney, obviously has some conflicts and some history, that's very complex. The district attorney is a different story. The district attorney actually prosecuted AAA at the Hunters Point Shipyard, so they have no excuse, not to take action. I did send DA Chesa Boudin a letter via certified mail that included the letter that I had received from the state attorney general, via his representative, and never got any type of response. And that's been a disappointment. But, if he's reelected, I think that, he'll possibly take greater action on what's going on.
And the grand jury has said that they should not proceed with the developments, the condos, all this land. What do you think about that?
I think that there needs to be a moratorium, of course, on June 18, 2021. The Bonner lawsuit filed a Proposition 65 legal injunction because of those fence line violations that we've documented, including documenting worsening body burdens in people living at that western fence line. More importantly, the city and county in San Francisco needs to stand up and say, we're not going to accept this landfill. That's the issue. That's why the Navy is over there excavating that landfill, because they're going to turn it into a little Christmas present and turn it over to the city, and the city and county again needs to take the step to not accept the landfill, which is a common sense position to take.
And the idea of developing housing, other facilities on a radioactive dump site, what do you think about that?
Well, I can't emphasize how crazy it is, especially if you just look at the Navy's own documents, the Parcel E2 Record of Decision, the Parcel F feasibility study that shows the extent of radiation contamination. There are probably 2,000 radium dials in the landfill, irradiated animal carcasses, a radioactive sandblast, and who knows what else is in there. So this is information that is in the public domain. The EPA, the Navy, they have published these documents, and the city, wants to sleep on documentation like this and site houses in a shipyard south multi-use district, which is what they want to do. That's in an area, by the way, where the police officers were sited in Building 606, and where we have an independent cancer cluster.
And the UC animal facility there, people got contaminated?
Without question, we just screened one of the UC workers who's got thallium, in concentrations that are, dangerously elevated. We've been rescreening the UC.
And the UC Board of Regents, the management, what are they doing about it? Because they've been fighting them getting work.
Anything, it is being handled as a workers' comp, issue, and they're being low key about it. But the UC worker exposures is one of the most potent and powerful issues liability issues that the city and county faces, in addition to, having city residents that are living within feet of this western fence.
And there are excavations still going on, dust and other things. Is that still happening in Hunters Point?
Of course. I'm going to go over, probably later today and get some updated photos. But the entry to the shipyard, which is the eastern end of Plu at Crisp Road, that is immediately adjacent to a children's playground, and a church and homes, and public housing, and the Navy is excavating, the landfill. It is also within feet of, Building 830 where the UC employees are.
So they're continuing the removal of soil, and it's without proper oversight for people in the
landfill to transfer it to the city and county of San Francisco for open space development, and the people in the city need to stand up, for their safety, for the safety of future generations, and stop thinking that this is just affecting 35,000 people living around this fence line. This is with climate change and sea level rise, a citywide issue.
And we're coming up on Juneteenth. One of the issues is the systemic discrimination of black, brown people right here in San Francisco. I mean, does this have to do with environmental racism and what's happened to the black and brown?
But the people that we are screening are, fat, skinny, old, young, black, white, Latinx, Asian, male, female. All you have to do is live within the 1 mile perimeter of that shipyard, and you are going to ultimately, accrue a dangerous body burden. And in a very perverse sense, it unifies the community, to have people of all, ethnic groups, being affected like this. And again, that's another reason why the city needs to stop treating this neighborhood like, canaries in the coal mine, and stand up and take a,
And the San Francisco Health Department, it has a budget over $1 billion. What has the San Francisco Health Department done to survey the cost to the residents, the effect of the contamination?
They're not doing anything. In fact, we have evidence of data manipulation, and the issue that I believe the civil grand jury report failed to issue is that the director of health, Grant Koufax, meets annually with the city controller to develop a formula to bill Lennar for oversight of soil actions. It's called earth moving activities at the naval bases. So there is a line of authority here, that the
So they're co-developing with Lennar, the city?
I'm sorry?
They're co-developing with Lennar. In other words, the city is collaborating with Lennar to do the development.
Of course, the city has layers of contractual, agreements that go through the Office of Community Investment and Infrastructure.
My name is Ariane Harrison. I'm the founder and executive director of Marie Harrison Community Foundation, Inc. for Social and Environmental Justice, www.canwelive.org. We are really self-sustaining.
Your mother didn't she die from being contaminated?
Yes. I'm going to say a big yes to that. She had pulmonary disease, but she's probably the one that got.
She didn't smoke.
She didn't smoke. That was there to protect us, fell asleep at the wheel. However, we have been in dialogue and conversations. They need to hear from the community what the community is telling you, that we need for you to adopt and put into play. This is urgent. What the grand jury came up with, because those are things that we have been talking about for years and have been concerns of community resident members, and all the sufficient evidence that you need besides what is evidently here on this document that I'm holding in my hand, it's in our bodies.
Well, one of the Chronicles said, the reporters said that the health department, where have they been in investigating the health conditions of the residents?
Well, I can say this much. I can say that we have had these conversations with the health department time and time again over the years. I know that they started a process many years ago of tracking the clusters of cancer and respiratory disease in the community. However, that search and research had came to an end abruptly.
So are they testing the residents? I mean,
No.
Treasure Island, the same thing.
Well, Treasure Island, it has a remember, let me be sure that you get and understand this. Treasure Island is a part of San Francisco. It is San Francisco too, and they have the immense amount of issues in Treasure Island, just like we do in Bayview Hunters Point. And it's about time that we start thinking about the residents and the people that were there, that they were in office to serve and to start protecting life. You know what I'm saying? I think that we should all have that same genre of love. Love is an action word, and it also means that we are going to protect and guard the health of our citizens, our residents, and our voters, right?
And Hunters Point has the highest statistics of asthma disease in San Francisco.
Respiratory disease, and those come in all different kind of fractions of how it looks. I'm not a doctor to break down all the elements of respiratory disease. There's respiratory cancer, lung cancer, there's asthma, and there's a bunch of other things. But we do have licensed professionals. That's what's different this time.
Dr. Himsa Shamshai.
We have Dr. Himsa Shamshai, who has been doing this work for a very long time.
You were tested by.
Yes, and I was personally tested by Dr. Smith.
And what did she find?
What she found is I brought with me a breakdown of the elements and radioactive isotopes that are in my body. Okay.
Where do they come from?
Where do they come from? Where they come from? The shipyard. Apparently, they come from but you also have to keep in mind that Bayview is an over-industrialized community. So we're getting inundated with air pollution, air, water, and land. Right, so we're getting hit with toxics every which way. We can't escape it. You know what I'm saying? So I am asking those that are in charge of our well-being to not let this be another generation lost, and stop crossing your fingers and hoping that the ultimate design of disaster does not happen or occur on your watch.
Well, the Board of Supervisors and the mayor know about this. There have been whistleblowers who've come out, put their job in jeopardy, and yet they've done nothing. Why is that?
Well, I can't speak to that. That's a question that you need to ask them.
Well, why do you think it is?
Okay.
You think the developers really are running City Hall?
Well, I think the developers are running City Hall. Unfortunately, what happens is that no matter how passionate we are, some people put profit and money before people. That's not a new recipe. That's an old recipe, you know. And there has always been an integral war between the haves and the have-nots. You see, there's a way to make the two parties get along. The haves are always imposing on the have-nots, but the have-nots want something too: clean air, water, and land.
Well, Supervisor Haney had a hearing on Treasure Island, and the health department came. They had a representative. They said they're not even testing people. What's going on with the health department? I mean, you know, it'd seem that Haney and these supervisors should demand that the health department actually start testing everyone there, workers and residents.
Well, so should the CDC. Let's go a little bit harder. Let's go a little bit higher than that. Let's talk about Proposition 65, and let's talk about enforcement. You know,
Who's doing the enforcement at Turner's
talk
Way?
about that kind of stuff. You know, California has some pretty great laws for environmental justice. However, it's all for nothing if they're not being held accountable.
Wasn't Gavin Newsom in favor of the development on a radioactive dump site?
I believe that he surely was, and a couple of other people. You know what I'm saying?
He was mayor also of San Francisco when these whistleblowers were being retaliated against.
Yes, he was.
And what did he do about it?
We wouldn't be standing here right now today.
Kamala Harris was district attorney, and she had environmental.
For herself. Me, I'm not a politician. That's not why I'm here. You know what I'm saying? I'm not here to critique what they did and did not do. We know it was done, and we know it was done in the past. I'm talking about what can we do right now, today. What can we do right now today?
So should there be a halt in development? Because they're planning to go ahead and build more condos?
Absolutely. There should be a halt in development. Anything else, it don't take a rocket scientist to know there should be a halt in development. You know, matter of fact, we need an emergency contingency plan that works for everyone. That means that seeing that the harm has already been done, and people already have all of these elements, body elements, and it's not just bad gene theory, right? And if we do have a position to where we are inundated to get these kind of things, accumulate cancer and all that kind of stuff. I have an auntie that lived to be 102 years old, but she doesn't live here in Bayview, Hunters Point.
And we're coming up on Juneteenth. The systemic racism, you think there's environmental racism right here in San Francisco?
To say anything else would be uncivilized, right? Yes, there is environmental racism, because when coming to any low-income community near you, you're going to find these other places where they dump chemical waste and all these other different elements and stuff, and trash, and as well as have industry polluters that come into that community and that operate without reprisal or paying for their sins and crimes against humanity. Now,
talk to me about the reaction to the chemicals that were found in your report.
Well,
how did you feel?
How did I feel? I felt vindicated. And I know that all of the EJ groups felt vindicated as well for things that have been talked about forever. You know, this is not a new fight. This is an old fight that's been going on for a very long time. My mother, Green Action, and other EJ groups that are not here, unfortunately, today. I do want to mention that Bayview Hunters Point advocates, they're not here either, but me and a couple of us all grew up in the rooms together, right? We want to be the generation that it ends with.
My name is Tanya Randell. I am the Administrative Director of Marie Harrison Community Foundation, Inc. for Environmental and Social Justice. The water is lapping at our doorsteps, everyone's doorsteps. We cannot stop the tide. We need to work together and fix the problem. We need science and we need engineering to lead the way.
Yes, we do.
No capping, no seawall is going to stop the water from coming in. This is all of us. What happens here translate all over the world.
Right.
It started in the Bayview.
Yes.
It went to Japan.
Yeah.
And now it's back. It came back.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to mention that. We have not been tested. Our health has not been a priority. We need to have science lead the way.
Woo!
Yes.
Now that the grand jury has said that our science is valid,
Whoa!
we need you to follow us to the promised land of cleaning up. District 10, Bayview Hunters Point Shipyard.
About 2 years ago, I was hired for Green Action during the Orange Sky, and that time they had a a program where they wanted to build, program, and install 10 air monitors within Bayview Hunters Point. And I took over and came in and I built those boxes. And we had to look for locations, whether they were public places like libraries or private homes as well. So basically I built, programmed, and installed them, and they read the PM matter, basically what's in the air. And they read green if it's good air quality and red if it's horrible. And they've been reading horrible. Right now we've been having some pushback sometimes because of the inconsistency with the Wi-Fi, but the issue we're having is that BACMID won't validate what we're finding. So it's just like, if you are allowing us to do this, so say if it's in red, agree with us and say, okay, the air quality is red, it's not good right now. So right now we own that data, the government doesn't own that data at all. And that's something that we wanted to do under the Marie Harrison, her mother's name basically in Bayview Hunters Point. So we are asking people to volunteer their homes or public businesses to put these air monitors in their locations, and we constantly can come in, service them, just like the cable man services your cable, and come in and do it. And we have a new air monitoring technician right here. Woo!
I don't know where we got all these shy people from.
But we need to continue to do our own work on top of our own science and be backed by the people of the community and also be backed by the people of the public and of City Hall to validate what's happening. If the grand jury has this going on, we already have our scientists and the science is there, and we're also monitoring ourselves. So we don't need to rely 100% on the government when we know what's in our bodies and what we're suffering with on a regular basis as well.
Bradley Angel, Green Action for Health and Environmental Justice.
You have these signs, we demand complete cleanup of toxic and radioactive waste. How long have they been working on cleanup at Hunters Point?
They've been working on so-called cleanup for decades. And
how much money?
Hundreds of millions,
over $1 billion.
Yeah, countless, using taxpayer money to clean up the mess that our government and industry created. And the reality is, I don't think they can ever fully clean up.
So why are your signs calling for a proper cleanup when you're on a radioactive dump? Why should we be spending government money trying to clean up a radioactive dump?
Well, because lives matter. And the Bayview Hunters Point is.
Can you just surround it and shut down the construction?
I don't think so. I think we want to.
You think people can live on that site?
Absolutely not. Nobody should live on there. I think.
Why spend money on cleaning it up?
Because it's contaminating the people of Bayview Hunters Point today.
But that means more development if they can.
It's leaking into the bay, and with sea level rise and rising groundwater, it will be spread further into Bayview Hunters Point, further into the bay, affecting the whole bay ecosystem and communities all over the bay. So there's no easy answers. And I don't think, first of all, Green Action opposes the Lennar development. Whether it was a good company or bad, I think they're bad. People should not live on that site.
Do you think federal money should be spent on cleaning it up for more development?
Well, since the federal government caused most of the problem, unfortunately that's the case. But when it comes to saving lives of a community,
cleaning it up isn't saving lives, is it? I mean, they're good.
I disagree with you. I totally disagree with you. The fact is that, and I agree, I don't think it could ever be fully cleaned up.
Then why spend more money on cleaning it up?
Because they have to clean up more than they plan.
The cleanup is for development, isn't it? Well, that's why they're cleaning it up for development.
That's their plan. That's not our plan. Our plan is and our demands are to force a cleanup to protect people's lives. To hell with Lennar and their shipyard development for rich people from around the world. We don't want to see that, even if it was clean.
But you think you can clean up a radioactive dump site? I mean, they've been working how many decades on it? They spent $1 billion. I mean,
well, first of all, they hired a company that committed massive fraud.
They should go to jail. I agree with you.
And I'm glad a couple did go to jail. And
not the executive,
more need to.
Not the top executive.
Absolutely, and I agree completely. But this is really challenging because it stinks that. Average people have to foot the bill ultimately, right? But there's not a giant corporation that existed that, it was the Navy that sandblasted radiation off of ships. It was, so, we're stuck with that. But and there are no good options. But the least bad, you cannot leave atomic bomb residue and toxic waste by the shoreline in a neighborhood that's already heavily impacted. So, and what we advocate is there needs to be a commitment to clean up as much as is humanly possible, do it as safely as possible with community oversight, which has never happened, independent community oversight. And then secondly, the community of Bayview Hunters Point, let the government agencies and also communities who live near disposal sites, we all need to get together and figure out what do you do with this stuff. But what we do know is, because it is a life and death matter, and money shouldn't factor into that.
Yeah, but City Hall has known about this for decades.
Of course.
The Department of Public Health. You think there's corruption? You think that City Hall's been captured by Lennar?
That's quite clear. One of the Green Action's been speaking about this corruption and the fact that City Hall and other government agencies and politicians are in bed with Lennar.
So why hasn't there been prosecution by the city attorney in San Francisco, by the state attorney, Rob Bonta, the U.S. government? You'd think that if
and I'll give you an example. Couple of years ago, about 2 years ago, the Chronicle got a hold of emails from Amy Brownell at the so-called health department to the developers at Treasure Island and Hunters Point, suggesting that they request a scan for radiation from helicopters. And she said, and I'm paraphrasing, don't worry about it because this equipment doesn't pick up the radiation. And we filed a complaint with the state attorney general and demanded an investigation.
Who was the state attorney general at that time?
At that time was...
Kamala Harris?
No, it was... who would have that been the last... whoever the last one was. But of course, no action because...
Xavier Becerra?
Yeah, Becerra.
And he knew about this.
Yes, and not to mention it was front page of the Chronicle, right? At that time, in the Chronicle story, and there's a couple of people quoted, myself, calling for heads to roll, and Supervisor Walton saying, oh, this is unacceptable, we're going to have hearings on this, and nothing happened once again.
So Amy Brownell still working for the city?
And as far as I know, Amy Brownell is still working. She thinks it's all safe. And I guess in her mind, possibly, I don't read minds, there's a double standard. What's safe for, so she thinks is safe for lower income working class people of color. I don't think they give a damn. And that's why Green Action and community members have been out here for decades now.
Well, if you have these officials, Mayor London Breed, Gavin Newsom, Xavier Becerra, Kamala Harris, who was district attorney in San Francisco when whistleblowers were being retaliated against, they've seemed to all cover it up. Should they be criminally prosecuted?
Well, I can't give legal advice.
Obstruction of justice?
In a perfect world, I would say, not giving legal observation. Hell yeah. And I think it's a crime. And it's a human rights violation, and it's a civil rights violation. And again, your questions are good ones. And over 35 years now, I've worked with hundreds of communities around this country, and including Bayview Hunters Point for pretty much all that time. This is one of the worst sites, but it's like a broken record.
And the grand jury, said you shouldn't develop because of the level of the bay increasing. You think they're going to pay attention? What has Mayor Breed said in response to this grand jury report?
Well, the only thing I've seen was a vague statement from the mayor's office that was in the Chronicle story. And I know, our colleagues from the community are seeking meetings with the mayor and Supervisor Walton. And
isn't she being supported by Lennar?
You'd have to ask her. She's certainly in cahoots with them, and as is the Supervisor Walton, who thinks that the Lennar development's the best thing that's happened to Bayview Hunters Point. And I'm paraphrasing, but that's generally what he has said. The bottom line is they're both from Bayview Hunters Point. I think somewhere they have to have a piece of heart.
One of the relative of Mayor Breed's got cancer from,
and so they know. The reason Green Action was founded years ago by people from frontline communities, not professional activists, people from the communities dying, seeing their families die themselves with cancer, is to have an organization that stands up and speaks truth to power, knows what's going on. We know which side City Hall's on.
But if there's no prosecution, why would they pay any more attention to this grand jury than other grand juries, as Dr. Humside?
I think, our hope would be, although I have no faith in the system we live under, right? The system we live under protects corporations, not people. So I'm not holding my breath. What I am doing, though, because, I'm in my late 60s now. I've been involved in social justice struggles, and I know that people can win. And so it would be great if they were prosecuted, but we are going to win this fight. We're going to get a better cleanup. Will the cleanup, can it be 100%? I don't think so. Should anybody ever live there, even if there was the best possible cleanup? No. I think it's just too dangerous. I think it should be cleaned up to the extent humanly possible, fenced off.
It's a Superfund site.
It's a Superfund site, and that means it's one of the worst in the country.
It's happened all over the country, as you know. These brownfields, they developed the Superfund sites. Developers have said we're going to clean them up. They don't clean them up, and then people get sick who live on these, and workers get sick.
And this is the work that Green Action does, and the people who founded Green Action and lead our organization are from those communities. So, so many of the community people I've worked with from Bayview, Hunters Point, Green Action's own Marie Harrison is no longer with us. Tessie Esther from Hunters, who served on our board.
These people have gotten cancer and gotten sick from living in Hunters.
That's right. And, Marie couldn't die because she couldn't breathe anymore, but she didn't smoke. And she worked at the shipyard, and she lived when she was younger and lived in Bayview, Hunters Point. So to me, this is a war. We're not fighting it with guns, but it's a war for justice and people's health. And we're going to do ethically and peacefully, but quite directly, everything and anything we can possibly do to turn the heat up on the politicians, and keep reminding City Hall who you represent. We know whose interests they're representing up to now, and it's showtime. So I expect, and excuse me, I think the civil grand jury report will help put the spotlight on them, and they will be judged by their actions, and they're going to be held accountable.
And the state agencies, California Department of Pesticides and Toxins,
aside from
what have they done?
Well, they've helped cover up the problem as well.
Mayor Newsom's agencies have helped cover up the problem.
Of course, but it's been long before Newsom was in the governor's seat.
Governor Brown.
It goes back to the beginning. And one of the things that Green Action does with our community partners, including this afternoon, we're having a meeting with the Water Board and asking them both about the shipyard and Treasure Island. It's in light of this report, which we've been telling them for years.
They can make the same report on Treasure Island as they made for Hunters Point with the water level going.
Absolutely, and it's even crazier, right? It's in the middle of the bay, and it's got so much less profile than Hunters Point. So this is, it's showtime, and we think this is a ticking time bomb. I think we're making progress, and now over the next week or two, we'll see what City Hall how they respond, if at all. And we'll take it from there. But we never, as my dear friend and colleague and comrade Marie Harrison said, never surrender. And we're never surrendering. We're going to win.